This week's parasha, we have Birchas Kohanim, and it says, "V'soma shmi bnei Yisrael v'nivarchem," that by Birchas Kohanim, they will be placing the name of Hashem on Kol Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bench them. Now, the word "V'soma shmi," so the name that they use, the Kohanim use, is the Shem HaMefurash. And the Ikrim explains a little bit about the concept of Shem HaMefurash, why it's called Mefurash, and so on. So the name Shem HaMefurash many times will speak of people will explain the word Shem HaMefurash as meaning the clear name, like the word Pirush. So this is the name that is most clearly HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the Ikrim says the word Mefurash comes from the word Parush, which means to separate from, to be away from something, apart from something. Now, it's the same way we use the term Parush, meaning a person who stays away from indulging, things of that nature. That's what the word Parush is. So let's try to understand. So he's explaining over here why exactly this is called Parush. In what sense is this mean away from everything, apart from everything, and so on? He identifies it with the same word like Prushim and so on. So he explains, and he explains as follows. Whenever I have a name that includes a few different entities that can include entities, that name does not set something apart from others. So let's give an example. If I say this person is a tall person, so that word tall can allude to other people as well. So the tall one, it might describe one particular person in the group, but it's not something that definitively sets the person aside from others. There may be someday other tall people walk into the room, even if there are no other tall people around, but tall is a measure of height, and many other beings possess height, and therefore I'm not really saying something that describes the thing itself. In other words, anything about something that can describe other things is not describing the essence of it, because I can't say this is tall when tall applies to others, or at least can apply to others, and so on. If I say this person is a genius, great. He may be the only living genius today, but genius is something that can apply to others, and therefore, once again, I can't use it for this person only. The word Parush means set aside, and it cannot apply to others, and therefore this is its identity. So let's go to people. When I give a name, this is Chaim so and so. So even though theoretically we can other people could have used the name, but in this context, Chaim so and so is only this person, and it's not that it could be someone else. I'm disregarding the fact that you could name other people that, but in terms of the Chaim Cohen that I'm referring to, this is the Chaim Cohen. That's it. When it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to describe it in a way that we're using a term that can only apply to him, and therefore it will be essential. So the terms that we could use, that we could possibly use, taken from the world around us, big, all the terminology of the world, and I'm using it. So mighty good, and whatever term is going to be basically associated with something else. There is one thing that I can take from this world, apply it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that nothing else can be that. And that is existence. If I say the world does not really exist and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists, and the world exists by the dint of his wanting to exist, then we define HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that is uniquely his, because it doesn't relate to other things. The place with an idea like this is borrowed from is the Rambam. In the very, very first halachas of Sodei Torah, he gives the most elementary definition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being the one who would exist even if nothing else exists, and nothing else could exist were he not to exist. So existence in an absolute sense refers to Hashem and only to Hashem, and to nothing else. So if we're to look for a name that would tell us HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that nothing else has, that would be existence. Now it's true that everything exists, but that's a secondary existence. They don't exist intrinsically; they exist because HaKadosh Baruch Hu endowed them with such, and therefore we can disregard that. So we have the existence of everything, and the real existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yud Kei Vav Kei is a name that comes from the word to exist, like Hoya Hoya V'yeh, that's where it comes from, and it means to exist. In the sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists, nothing else exists. So here we have a name that we can apply to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and only to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's interesting because the name itself is the only name that we could give to something that we're aware of. It's not totally out of our world, but in a way that can extrapolate HaKadosh Baruch Hu existence. Like we said before, things that are spiritual names that have no connection to this world don't connect with us. We have no idea what we're talking about. Terms that overlap, like wise, mighty, strong, merciful, are things that have both. Then they also they don't define HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let's briefly map out what the Ikrim is saying. The Ikrim is explaining what is Shem HaMefurash. Shem HaMefurash is the name that identifies HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being unique. Just like names of people are unique. So, and again, even if there's a 100 Chaim Cohens, but each Chaim Cohen is really himself. He's not of the same class as others. You could say he's a person. In as much as a person, he's in a class of people. As much as he's tall, he's in a class of tall. But in terms of existence, each person is unique, and therefore we're not going to be able to. So when we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has any power whatsoever, it's not a Shem HaMefurash, because that same attribute exists amongst people. When we speak of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being existence itself, then we are defining a characteristic that, even though we have an awareness of what that means, but it certainly does not mean it the way we mean it. The word existence by HaKadosh Baruch Hu means exists in a very essential way. It exists because in non-existence does not apply to him. Something that does not apply to anything else but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when we're looking for a name to define HaKadosh Baruch Hu, great, almighty, all of those, They are true of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but don't define him because they do not separate him from something else. Shem HaMefurash is a name that sets HaKadosh Baruch Hu apart from everything else, and therefore appropriately will be called, identifies him. It is the name that refers to the one thing which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu only in that sense, that is existence. The name of Havaya points to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only thing that truly exists. He endowed us with existence, but that already is a secondary category of existence.